Hi guys, welcome to this next instalment of With Bass in Mind. I'm going to be a bit of a fanboy this week, and the reason is because the absolute monster gentleman who is joining me in the share, he's already cackling away, look at him, in the share today. Actually, we did a little podcast with Mo Foster just recently, and Mo spoke about the golden period of his career. This is when he was doing the Phil Collins stuff and the Jerry Rafferty stuff and all this lot. And it was, and he talks about highs and lows. And he said, yeah. And he goes, and then there was all the lads, all the boys that came after me and took over the scene, especially in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. And this gentleman's name came up, Mr. Pearce, who's now with us in his chair. And I've got to say, I owe about 2 years of my life to this gentleman. So we'll talk about that later on as well.
Yeah.
Steve, hello, mate. Welcome to With Bass in Mind. It's great to
have you. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure, man. Nice to see you.
Steve, if we've got a massive alumni of private students here. We don't do recorded video lessons as much. Everything's on a one-to-one basis. And every single member of the With Bass in Mind sort of crew that be watching this, when I reel off things like Wayne Shorter, Stevie Wonder, Herbie Hancock, Tom Jones, Hamish Stewart, every one of those students would be like, well, that's basically every single thing that we ever study with you, Phil. And I'm sitting with you, and you're going to go, I think you've just rolled off my CV, actually, haven't you, Phil? So it's Steve, I've got to. There's one thing that always comes to mind when the Steve Pearce banner comes up over the top of me. I always go, there's a lot of players, there's a lot of guys that have their golden years, and I don't want to sound like we're veterans looking back, because your career is going from strength to strength. But when we talk about, sustainability in the industry, how the hell have you done that? I mean, it seems like you've been around for absolutely ever now.
I have.
Every time I go and do a gig with someone, we'd go and do the London club scenes, and Ian William would be down there, singer, and then he used to tour with you with Tom and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I talked to somebody else. He's like, oh yeah, Steve's on that. I'm like, this guy's everywhere. I can't avoid him. Steve, let's just first of all put it in perspective, because to have a prolonged career at that level, mate, we're going to have to talk a bit third person. You have to talk about yourself out of body.
Right. Yeah.
What's been the decisive thing for you? And if we look back and actually just say, let's just kick off with this. What's been a definitive thing that's kept you at such a high level of session work for so long? Because I've got to tell you now, my career's on its arse. So let's...
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. The real. If we go back to when I first got a bass guitar, my dad was a piano player.
Yeah.
And when I was 14, he bought me a bass guitar. And in the bass guitar case was the Mel Bay bass guitar method.
Yeah.
And so from the very first day I put the bass around my neck, I opened the book and it showed me where a B flat was, what the open strings were. And without any technique or any idea, really, I learned to read. I started to learn to sight read music. And my dad was a great player. He ran a jazz big band for 30 years, which I played in right up until his death. And he used to do all the arrangements and all that. All the music business that is now, I've all played in my dad's big band. He used to be the feeding ground coming out of Nijo. You came and did my dad's band on a Sunday lunchtime at Ruislip Golf Club or all over the place. So, and of course I learned as I learnt is the word. And I went out and played with my dad when I was 15. That's when I started playing. And my dad, God bless him, he wrote out standards for me. He wrote a big book of busking standards. He wrote pop tunes out for me. He wrote little lines that I had to read. And I had some really very good advice actually when I was young. I mean, at 16, I went to see Roy Babington. Do you know Roy Babington, who used to be the bass player in Soft Machine? Legend, absolute legend. Yeah. And he was so kind and so helpful to me at 16, and I knew nothing really, And he gave me books that I still use today, the bass studies. Stortrab, Simandl, all those things. I still play them. I didn't play them on double bass because I didn't play double bass then, but I'll always play them. And so I've always, my practice is always sight reading. So that's kept me, that I had that ability from very early on. And also my dad was not a session player. He didn't play in the studio. And I always wanted to be a studio musician. So if you ask me one thing, it's my absolute determination to wear headphones, because I call it egotism or narcissism or whatever you like. I love hearing myself play. I love it. It's a constant. I love playing in the studio. I just love it. I always wanted to do it. My dad said, well, you got to be able to read, you got to do that. And I didn't go to college, so I taught myself that. Also, during my early years in the studio, there'd be things written like Pocomena Mosso, and I had no idea what this means. So I've got the little rudiments, the book, red book, whatever it is. And I used to read and shed like that and made my own college. But once I realised that I wanted to do that, what I needed was to be around proper session players. Who did it for a living, and they did come out. We did a really lovely little nightclub gig in Wembley with my dad, 6 nights a week. I was 16 then, I think. Yeah, 16. And the drummer was a guy called Kenny Hollick, who used to do. I mean, in those days, there were sessions all day and all night, and I didn't do them, but these guys did. And I hung out with him, and Kenny was kind enough to say, well, listen, if you want to do it, come with me to the studio. So I used to drive to his house, and we'd drive all over the place. That's where I first went to Abbey Road, and I sat next to I met all sorts of bass players who were all really kind to me. I mean, obviously, they were asked whether it'd be okay for me to sit there, and I sat there with the headphones on and just drunk everything in, and I absolutely loved it. So the thing is, I was around in Mo's time. Actually, Mo was kind of much more rock and roll-y kind of session player. Yeah. And the drummer who used to take me around, this was the really old school session playing, back to like the 60s and the like Jack Pennell's band and all the really older session musicians who did the Muppet Show. And then the scene was, you walked in, sat down, 10 o'clock, you opened up, quick run through, red light on, and it was ridiculous pressure. Yeah. And I trained myself to do that, really. And that happened, that kind of, and it's still to some degree on some sessions, it is like that, where they're not going to stop for you, especially on a big film session. But that was the majority of my career in the studio. Sort of the first 2/3 of it so far, you had to be on the case. It was with old guys, and they were very unforgiving of passengers. Yeah. If you blew it, and the trumpet section used to look at you because they don't want to do it again. It was really, really ergonomic, and everybody was on it, and there was no time for stupid questions. I mean, I was a great fan of Tommy Tedesco in Guitar Player magazine, and I used to drink that in as well, because he'd tell some great stories, and of course I'd go and I would be the young player sitting next to fantastic players, Martin Kershaw, Colin Green, yeah, all the old guitar players, Mitch, obviously I've known since I was 17, Mitch Dalton, and that side of the studio work is what I did for many, many years. And then, of course, and like guitar players, you had to read. And of course, I mean, there are fantastic reading guitar players, 4 of which, and Adam Goldsmith, obviously our friend, who are fantastic reading guitar players. But sometimes the guitar players were there because they could read, and they had a clue no concept of funk playing or whatever. I mean, it's much more versatile now. So you get guitar players I sit next to who are not so good readers, but that's not what they're booked there for the vibe. Yeah. So that whole sight reading on the first time through, Da, 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 da. There's a whole swathe of session work that is not like that. You know, it's a studio work, and then you have to unlearn that, because the whole idea is, well, there's a famous story of a session guitar player where the MDs MDs prevaricating and saying, do you want it like this? Do you want it like this? Well, try it like this, try it like that. And the guitar player held up his part and set fire to it and said, well, you better make your mind up because it's going up in flames now. I mean, they were pretty hard-nosed, you know.
What I like about it is when you talk and we converse, break bread about these sort of studio stories. I think, like I said, if you can cut the mustard and you can hold your own at that level, the level of humor in the studios is the banter's amazing. I remember one of my old sort of senseis, Eddie Harvey. You talk about
Eddie Harvey, a lovely man. He used to play in my dad's big band. What a nice man.
There's another little link that I've kind of kept under wraps until now. But first of all, I'm a rice slip boy. And my dad used to play golf, and we used to go over on Sundays, and there would be big bands upstairs.
Yeah, my dad's band played there for years.
And I'm now thinking to myself, bloody hell, there's a surprise. The Pearces once again. But there's one other thing. I remember speaking to Eddie, and he talked about, you know, he'd be doing arranging all day. Eddie Harvey, wonderful jazz pianist, and then he would say, well, at the beginning of the 50s, so we're going a little bit further back. But to give an idea for the pressure that some people go through in the studios, which, you know, it can be good. He would say, well, I'd be playing dance bands, playing the real book, essentially, you know, until whatever o'clock. Then up until 4 a.m., you know, with a quill, writing out the parts for the next day. And then the next day, you'd be in, like you said, 10 o'clock, bang, you're in the studio. And after a few months of just relentless recording, because everything was live back then, it had to be recorded. It wasn't playback stuff as today. Have you went to the doctors and said, you know, by today's standards, you go to the doctor and they say, well, you need a break. We need to and we need to put you under the stairs for a few weeks and let you sleep. Eddie went to the doctors and he went, don't worry, son, this will sort you out. And they gave him, you know, the sort of the jam, the old boiled sweet jars that you get in the 50s. One of those full to the brim of amphetamines, which was essentially surplus from the fighter pilots from World War II. And they said, there you go, get stuck in. And then he said, I don't think he blinked for the next 5 years because it was the pressure he needed to a different sort of way of life today with digital engineering, being able to do a lot of sessions over the net, split studios. We talked about RPO in different places just before we came on the air. But that sort of wonderful ability to be in two places at once and take the time if you want to now, do a couple of overdubs. There's some great experiences that we talk about. Again, there's some common. I like to talk about common ground. We've both got a bit of theatre stuff. Mine's nowhere near as prolific as yours. I remember doing the Motown show in town. Actually, Ian King was on that actually with me as well. I remember night after night, whenever you dropped like My Girl, and you hear the whole audience, the hairs go up on the back of your neck. It's like, you just want to be in that situation. And one of the the biggest highlights of my career was playing Into the Mystic with Van Morrison. We did that at Duggan Hall. This is ground for you because you're big West Ender. You've got a wonderful history with Van. Let's talk. If I'd have said to you now, I said, look, Steve, let's just look over your shoulder, mate. I know it's for you, it's a day to day. Yeah, today I'm doing this and today I'm doing that. But there's got to be prolific moments in your career where you kind of go, yeah, I like that. I was having a bit of a stalk, and I remember there was this photograph of you, if I remember correctly, you was at the piano with Herbie Hancock on that for me would be, I'd stop if I had that photo, not of you, of me. You know, if I had there's got to be some moments where you just go, yes, that's the
well, it's funny, that was one where a truly terrifying moment, really, because it's like, you know, when I told my dad that I'm playing with 2/5 of the Miles Davis quintet, and I've got to be Ron Carter. It's
So,
like,
Steve, let me stop you. Your middle name's Miles, isn't it?
it is Miles, yeah, and
So
I'm the most massive Miles fan. So it's kind of,
your dad
it's,
probably lost his brain, didn't he, when you said
well, no,
Miles?
indeed. He said, "Oh, can I come? Can I come?" I said, "No, Dad, I can't handle you being around while I'm roasting." But it was an amazing. That was an amazing experience. But I mean, it's one of I'll tell this story because and actually it wasn't the very first time where it was a paradigm shift for me. Was I did a TV series with Tom Jones, which was exciting enough, 1992, and they said, "Oh, we've got Al Jarreau coming on as a guest." So, and I mean, when I was about 17, maybe even 16, can't remember, I had that Al Jarreau album, "Look to the Rainbow," with Abel Boreal on. It's a fantastic album, and I've been a massive fan. And I'm going to play with him. And he walked in, and it was quite a roast actually, because we were playing his latest single, and he brought Neil Larson over as his MD. He was a lovely guy, and he walks in, and we'd rehearsed this tune. He goes, "Okay, let's hear it." So we do the intro, and he doesn't start at the verse, and he said, "Keep going." He didn't sing at all. So we did that. We put an ending together. Stopped, and he went, "Okay, play it again." So we had to play it again. He's like, all right, okay. It was fine because we were all up for it. Yeah. Anyway, then he sang, and it ended up being a fantastic thing. And I thought, okay, I don't have to be so scared anymore, because I'm actually played with one of my heroes here, and it brings something out of you, and you go, you can't bring your fandom to the table. You're there to play bass with Al Jarreau. You don't care whether you think he's amazing or not, you know. So that was a real shift. And then I did a day with Steve Gadd, which was just mental, with everything but a girl. And I was driving. It was at Livingston Studios, which at the time I used to live in East Finchley. So Livingston from East Finchley in old time 1993 traffic was about 9 minutes away. I remember driving there, and it's just, you drive the back way to Livingston Studios, and there's a roundabout. And I came up to this roundabout, and I was laughing because it's like, I'm going to go and play a whole day with Steve Gadd. And I thought, all right, I can either just turn around the roundabout and drive back home again, or I could go in and take it on. So, and of course, I carried on. And that's the same thing I brought into the Herbie Hancock thing. Because actually, when I got the phone call from Pete Van Hook, who I've done albums for in the past, he phoned me up and he said, "I've got a gig for you." I said, "Oh, what is it?" He said, "Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, and doing Joni Mitchell tunes at Abbey Road." I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Oh, Vinnie Colaiuta as well." I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" I said, I'm not that, I don't know whether that's my kind of level of upright playing." He said, "No, you'll be fine. It's pop songs. You'll be absolutely perfect for it." And he said, the record company won't fly Dave Holland over. So it's like, oh, okay,
I'll fly him over.
Well, they said it wasn't, because it was a Herbie Hancock album called The River, I think.
Right.
It was called The River? It was all Joni Mitchell tunes anyway.
Yeah.
So there, of course, I said yes, and I spent 2 weeks playing along to the record. But of course, you go there, and Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, you realise they're interested in what you bring to the gig. They're not interested about your fear or anything. And it stopped the moment I played the downbeat. I felt amazing, and I just got into the vibe. Vinny made a lovely little groove up, and it was simple. I just drew on my got rid of the nerves and drew on my experience, which is obviously something you can't teach anyone, can you? You know.
What's really level? What's lovely about and leveling for everybody here is that I think at different points in your career you work with different people.
Yeah.
But every single person has a similar vibe or a relationship with someone. I not to make it about me, but I will just mention something about Van. Because I was the same. I was in awe, and I didn't belong there. I was like, it's a little bit out of my paycheck, you know, but I'm going to
Right.
go for it. Actually, there's another story that springs to mind. I'll mention that in a minute. But the Van came out. He did his, you know, it's like sound check, walked off, one,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
3 bars, and he's done. And we were all sitting there a little bit like, because it's a guest band. But I always say I'm a bass tourist.
Right.
I just fill in when everybody else isn't around.
Right.
And I was on a gig, and Van's a bit moody. He's in himself. He's not having the best of days. And all of a sudden, he turns to one of the other artists on the bill. It was a lovely evening, and one of which was Chas McDivitt, the old skiffle lad.
Oh,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he turned to Chas, and Van was completely in awe of Chas. And
Yes, yeah,
but it was exactly the same. You're saying like, crikey, like having you're not flying Dave out. Wow. And then you get a little in that mindset.
yeah, yeah.
I had the same where I did a bass gig for Donia Oxford, lovely boogie woogie player. And Lee Scalar did all of her bass over, and
Oh,
I
okay.
learned this, and I was just like, oh, okay, hang on a second. But yeah, but it's lovely to know that I feel it, you feel it, even
Yeah,
Van
yeah.
out it with
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, he's goes back to sort of skiffle, and I mean he's done records with Lonnie Donegan, hasn't he? I think as well. So he comes from that background.
Yeah.
Well, Van, I mean, I didn't really feel that with Van because I did quite a lot of recording with him, and I mean the thing is he's a little bit of a bully really, and if you can be bullied, then he'll go for you, and I'm not the sort to be bullied. Yeah. So I mean, he used to go into me a bit, but I wasn't having any of it. So, and I always provided where I mean, you know, I wasn't. I realised that Van is completely inarticulate in how he wants his music. He doesn't know anything really. And he just plays this incredible music from his soul on his guitar. And he plays it through once, and then he expects you to have it and get it together. And the first time I worked with him was all on tape, and so we'd play the best we could, and then go back and drop in when we couldn't, you know. But he liked me kind of like me making. There's a few little ideas on that album, Poetic Champions, that I got away with, and people still come up to me and say, "Oh, I love that Queen of the Slipstream." You know, I'll go, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." Right. He wanted me to play something around his normal chords, you know. So he was great. I mean, I saw him go into a few people. Yeah. But you know, it's not a sin. His music, you just have to learn. You have to learn that he can't explain himself, and it's not. That's the worst thing, is if musicians think because you can't read or you don't know, you know, one chord from another, it's just not like that. You have to work out what they want and be gentle with them and not intimidate them with your own, you know, look at me, mum, I can sight read fly shit, you know.
Oh, that's right. I remember chatting to Mo, because Mo did some stuff with it was with Mick Ronson as well. I think was on that gig as well.
That's right, and Dr. John. There's some great
Dr. John. Yeah.
I've seen him. Yeah,
there's a story about that one. I'll tell you when we're not off air. I remember when in similar breaking bread with Mo, and Mo was like, "So Phil, you're doing well now?" And I said, "Oh, thank you." He goes, "No, you're doing very well." I said, "You've also been sacked from Van."
Oh yeah, everybody has. I've done it twice. I've been in and out of his band twice. The second time, he still talks about me and spits blood. Although he's been really, really. I've had last time I worked with him was at the Albert Hall doing a Bobby Blue Bland tribute with Mick Hucknall and Paul Carroll. It was great gig. The band turned up and went, "Hey Steve, how you doing?" You know, and so it's completely cool. But when I couldn't, he sacked me because I was doing Randy Crawford's album at the time, and his drummer. He got his drummer, Dave Early, who's no longer with us, lovely drummer. He said, "Steve, you've got to come down to Ritz Studios in Putney, where Van's auditioning guitar players." I said, I can't do it. I'm in the studio with Randy Crawford." He went, "No, you've got to come." I said, I'm not coming. I can't. How can I just walk out of an album set? I've got a week. It's 2 week. We rehearsed for a week and recorded for a week. I said we're in the middle of recording. Anyway, my name was Mud for many years, and people have come up to me and goes, "Oh, he still goes off about you. He still goes off about you," because he wanted to put us on a retainer and all sorts of things, but you know.
Finally, I've got a gig where I can't associate your name now. I can stay that away. Steve, listen. First of all, it's such a joy to listen to you, mate.
Hey man, it's ask me anything. I'm open to.
Let's swing the direction a bit, because you worked with probably one of my biggest theatre crushes, a young lady called Cassidy.
CJ, brilliant.
CJ's got a little bit of my heart. Don't tell Callie. But she's going to come peering around the door in a minute now. I can let's talk about the Aldwych Theatres. My West End debut was in there with what was that with? Fame. And
okay.
You were resident in there doing Beautiful.
I was.
Introduce the show, tell us about what it was, and tell us about the seat, because that was a show that was incredibly well funded, and there was a lot going on inside the booths with mics and stuff like that, which was a bit of a luxury to be in that scenario. So tell us about Beautiful first of all, what it was, and how it all came around.
Okay, so it was the Carole King musical, Beautiful, all Carole King songs. My friend Steve Sidwell, who I was in Nijo with, did the orchestrations, and it had been on Broadway. I don't know whether he'd won a Grammy for his orchestrations, and it was really well received. And it was coming into the West End, and Steve Sidwell said, "Look, whoever's going to fix it," and I know Sylvia Addison is a friend of mine. Did Jesus Christ Superstar for her. She said, Steve said, "Right, I want this band. Get this band." So I didn't really want to do another show. I've done shows for many years, and it's, it's a great gig if you're a young musician with kids and a mortgage, and I pray for them to get back to it, because a lot of them are going through a real hard time. Good friends of mine who are in the West End, and so I said, "Oh, I don't know," and Sylvia said, "Well, Steve wants Neil Wilkinson to do it. Adam Goldsmith's doing it, Neil Wilkinson, and she reeled off the band that she got." And I phoned Neil up and I said, "Are you doing this show?" He said, "I don't know whether I'm going to do it." I said, "Well, I'll do it if you do it." And he says, "All right, I'll do it if you do it." So anyway, there's the band. And so the whole point was, it wasn't supposed to be a youngish band. It was supposed to be. I spoke to the American guy, Jason. He said, "Listen, we know you're not going to be here. You guys, we told you all the best bands, and studio guys. So it's not, we understand that you're going to put depths in the stuff, but we want you to play it because you know about this music, because it's 70s, 60s and 70s music. So the concept, the feel, all the rest of it. And it's not hard." He said, "And all you got to do is teach the people who come in and do it and tell them to play like you." And anyway, it was a fabulous experience, really, because we got to the rehearsal, and there's a huge trestle table with Steve Sidwell, and who's bigged us up big time, talked us up. And they count the first number, and it sounds amazing. And we played the whole show before the middle of the afternoon, and they all just went, "Wow, this is amazing, great," because we had it down, So it was a lovely gig to do. But as you say, there was some money about, and a special bass booth was built for me, and I had DI into Avalon DI for the bass guitar, lovely, and the double bass had what did I have then? Oh, a full circle pickup, and a really expensive valve mic, and it sounded amazing, apparently, out the front. And so it was a double bass and a bass guitar gig. I was in a little room with the two keyboard players, very, very civilized, and it lasted for however long it did,
I remember having, because I had out of hours, I had a little nose around the theatre. I got a few friends, and I remember coming down and seeing the bass booth,
Okay.
and it was me that moved a few things around to stitch it up. But the and I thought to myself, bloody hell, because I remember there's been a few shows that I've done, and I've turned actually JCS. I remember
Yeah,
I remember doing 30. You said you did it with for Sylvia. I did a
yeah,
tour of it, and I remember doing I think it was 39 lashes, and
yeah,
it was one motif for 39, and I was counting like a madman.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was getting jelly beans hitting me neck because all the boys that had been on the show for X amount of years, they were like, "He just the guy on stage is basically crucifying Jesus. Just wait until he
Yeah,
goes 38 and then go
yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah,
penultimate bar."
yeah, yeah,
Trying to,
yeah, yeah,
but I in that show, I literally had a rear gunner's seat. My knees were on the wall with a
yeah,
vertical stand, page hanging off, tiny little 3.5-inch LCD screen, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I had a Sans amp just
yeah,
literally gaffer taped to the bottom of the stand, and that was it.
yeah, yeah,
I turned up, well, for here right now, I can literally look at it. I've got a U5 Avalon here for my home
yeah,
recording. And I
yeah.
go in, and then you've got, I was just like, this is how the other half live. Look at this. You know, I'm getting gout in my seat, and you're living it up.
Well, I mean, listen. I did Les Miserables for 4.5 years, and that was really cramped. I could only sit in one position while I was playing.
And the whole
I
show's underscored, right? Isn't it? From begin,
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
is, it's
right.
like
Or
thousands.
play you played through. Yeah, yeah. I've done quite a lot of shows like that. Yeah, it could be. I think it can be pretty uncomfortable. I mean, when they go back, uh, who under what guise? I don't know. I mean, every West End theatre is a health hazard for a start. I mean, health and safety. I think they have dispensation, don't they? A health and safety, because there was like one toilet
Yeah,
downstairs.
yeah.
It's a joke, absolute joke. But
At, at, at the Aldwych, the first person down to the band room, you have to switch on the light and scare the mice off. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's good. Um,
yeah. It's amazing.
I've been very fortunate. I've had some lovely little shows, and one of my shows was a little world tour. Went over to Canada, and we did the O2 and all this sort of stuff. And it was basically again, as a surprise, recreation of your work. And that was because I was doing this little show. This
Hey,
was the Elvis with the RPO. This was them. They took the original voices and then re-recorded it with the RPO.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I got to play the O2 with that. And
Great.
I remember when I got the disc and I was sitting there, I was transcribing it all. And I think I looked on your Facebook page,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, when I was at this point of stalking you. And
Yeah.
I think at the time you was writing out, I think you said, "Here we go again," and
Yeah.
you was writing out, um, dun 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 dun, dun, which was basically the whole Roy Orbison pad, and you
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just putting it all
It was
out.
the most. It was the most depressing experience ever,
And then I
because
was
they're
like,
all ridiculously tragic songs. But
and
it was, yeah,
I thought to myself, he didn't do the RPO stuff. And
yeah,
once again, I found my entire career has been Pearce approved. Well, actually, Pearce fueled, I think, is the right way to go. Let's talk about the RPO.
okay,
There's been some great CDs and also some great bass players. I have got the biggest man crush on the planet from Jerry Sheff. So
yeah,
Jerry Sheff, Elvis, 1970, the Intercontinental years.
yeah,
Then from there we go on. I think you did 2 albums and a Christmas album, which was the Elvis stuff, if I remember correctly. That's what I remember learning
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Then there was the Roy Orbison. Jerry, the whole of TCB did was it the Night and Day album with them? That was Ronnie Tutt, James Burton,
right,
those boys. Um, then there's the Aretha Franklin one, which
yeah,
Aretha's my queen. Now
yeah,
you've got Tommy Gogbill, you've got Jerry Jamott, you've got Chuck Rainey. This is the creme
yeah.
of the creme, Steve.
And Eric Gale played
Oh
bass on a couple.
yeah. Now I know Eric Gale from Grover, Washington.
Obviously,
But
yeah,
yeah,
Alf and everything. Yeah, but he played bass on a couple of those Aretha tunes that we did.
and then more recently, and this is the one that I do want to talk about a little bit, which was obviously Brian Wilson with the Beach Boys. The
Yeah,
stuff that he did with Pet Sounds was arguably some of the greatest orchestrations on the planet.
yeah, yeah,
And then they've gone and rescored it and put the RPO behind it.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
epic. Let's
Yeah.
go back to the more virgin years with the Elvis recordings and stuff like that,
Yeah.
of that
Yeah. Yeah.
series anyway. Tell us about the process. Tell us about, first of all, where the gig came from. You
Okay.
transcribe a lot of your parts, but for me, if I turned up something, the parts normally surprised. So let's
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what happened was the first Elvis one, and it was really, it was a brand new thing. It's been so successful for Don Reedman and Nick Patrick. Um, the Elvis one was the first one where they had the technology to take off everything either side of the lead vocal, which is right down the middle of usually of the mix. I don't know how they do it, but it's pretty good. But I turned up on the first Elvis thing, and all I've got is Ralph Salmins on drums, me and Elvis in the headphones, which is the most bizarre, is absolutely bizarre experience anyway.
Yeah.
But I got in there into the studio, and I played double bass on Heartbreak Hotel, which basically actually is kind of a bit random. The do 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 do,
Yeah, yeah.
And of course you have to try and think of a way of playing it. My double bass is not set up with gut strings, rock and roll gut strings, like it probably was then. So we had to address that. Then I've got all I've got is Heartbreak Hotel, which is kind of a very basic tune, but they hadn't written the notes out. They'd just written the chords. And I said, well, I can hear the bass, double bass on the vocal track. Are you going to get rid of that? And they go, no, that's about it. I said, well, I'm going to have to play exactly what the bass player played. So I'm going to have to transcribe it. So there was like 15, 20 minutes while I'd write the thing and stopping and starting. It was a nightmare. I said, look, on the next one, why don't I just book me for a day and I'll transcribe everything, because then I can go right into it, because I know about what it gives me a chance to understand where Chuck Rainey plays, how he plays on the right finger, and the Beach Boys things, and they could then send me like isolated stems of the bass, or in some of the the early stereo ones, the bass is on the left or the right. So they'd send me these tracks over, and I'd sit at home and I'd transcribe them. And so because I'm OCD, and I'd get into it and I'd go, God, and I'd be because some of the notes are very indistinct, especially when we did the Christmas albums with Tony Bennett and all that. And there's an orchestra, and it's not the jazz changes on this Christmas song; it's the orchestral changes, So it was great. It was great, but it was a chore really. But I did get paid for it, so. And that's how we came to do it, and that's why I was super efficient. In fact, the first Roy Orbison one, I did it in a day. I think I did 13 tracks, and about 5 or 6 of them had bass guitar and double bass on.
Wow, wow. You talk about OCD. I'm terrible. I can't sleep with some of these, but I can't imagine you sitting down and going, oh, this is having the bleed of the original bass in there. Because with all respect to Bill Black, and we love him to death, but his intonation was a bit shady in places.
Yeah.
So
well,
get all the quarter tones in as well, Steve.
the really funny one was we did the Buddy Holly, right? Which I did half of, and I broke my hand, and Don Richardson did the other half. So Donzo went and did it. But the ones I did, I transcribed. I did the whole album, transcribed it, and I on almost all of the Buddy Holly tracks, the bass player screws up on the last chorus because he's given it one, because they're great records and they're full of. And I did it with Neil Wilkinson, and we were at Angel, and we had to play exactly the same. And Neil's also very OCD, really, and knowledge of how these things are doing. And we both had to play this speeding up at the same time to match with Buddy Holly's voice. It took a little bit of time, but that's where the gold is. I mean, the Aretha Franklin one drove me mad the most. So fortunately, there's lots of bass geeks on the net, which I was able to download their work. I didn't actually have to transcribe all of them because some of them were on there, and I had to listen, and some needed a little bit of changing. But yeah, I mean, Border Song, that was a bitch to do. What did I do? What else did I do? Anytime Chuck Rainey's around, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah. You're going to be up against the wall on that one, that's for sure.
That lovely stuff he does up the top of the neck is genius, you know.
There's so I can't even. Those albums for me are just those players and that whole generation is just absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
The Aretha stuff, you say Eric Gale's on that, and we talked about Tommy and Jerry Jamott stuff with Purdy. I think we spoke about it earlier on. There's a lovely live album of Aretha which was at the Fillmore, but then it's King Curtis does the support act. It's the same
That's
band.
right.
So
yes.
by the time Aretha comes on, the band are just
yeah.
in the zone. So they come out
Yeah.
absolutely blazing. How did you go about trying to, you say being OCD, trying to be things correct and that lot? There's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of accuracy. I mean, talking amplification, we're talking, like, as you said earlier on, gut strings, foam. If you're doing the Beach Boys stuff, pick, carol, pick, foam, top end, that sort of stuff. How much attention to that sort of stuff did you give? Was that something?
Well, I mean, that's kind of, it's a part of my craft that I'm very proud of, because I've since I started getting more than one bass, you know, I've got precision with a labella flat rounds and foam. It's in a case ready. I've got my lovely old JV series Squire jazz bass with flat wounds on, which is fantastic for, well, it's fantastic for everything actually, but it's great for playing with a pick, doing that 60s, 70s kind of acid rock kind of stuff. So the Beach Boys one, I used it a lot on that one. And I used the flat wound ones. I've got Music Mans, and, you know, and so I'm always thinking how to emulate that sound, because a lot of it was all so natural to the player, and I've got to come from a totally analytical place in order to emulate it, and I like that quest. Now I've just done a movie that comes out next week called Cruella, which is the new Disney movie about a young Cruella, which was a fantastic experienced musical thing to play on. There was not anything technical to play, but the attention to detail, because Nick Britell is a fantastic composer. He did all of his demos on a Beatle bass, Hofner Beatle bass, a sample of, not playing, a sample of, and a couple of other things. His musical arranger sent me the sounds that I was going to get. And I sat here and got my pedals out and basses out. And so by the time I got to the studio, I was kind of on the page as far as that. And even then, we were changing things, doing things, moving things here, and I had a huge arsenal of basses, which I really enjoyed. In fact, I've got a 64 Beatle bass I've just bought after this movie, because after millions, a whole life of having to turn up to Abbey Road to do a jingle in the style of the Beatles, where I've had to hire a Beatle bass and sit where Macca was and all the rest of it. And I finally got one. Anyway, I used it on this thing, and that was attention to detail par excellence. And I came out. I don't know. I'm not into, you know. Maybe some other people get what I got from it, but you're talking about the energy. There is a hell of a lot of energy in the sound concept. I've had people say, "Have you got a felt pick?" Because it was an old style way of playing, and I've got a felt pick in my bag. You know, so but I like being able to provide that, and it's. I don't think it suits everybody. I mean, we talk about people. How have I been here so long? It's because that occurs to me. And I spent a fortune buying a Beatle bass, and I'll never get booked on it again, probably. But I was so pissed off about not having one. You know, it's such a nice thing to have. Anyway, it's lovely.
But Steve, you know, this is the thing, and I think for the guys that, you know, they have their favorite Fender, or they have a bass that's their go to. you know, I'm nowhere near as much prolific recording as you. I do quite a lot of stuff here for
Yeah.
Nashville, which is lovely. But I've got instruments that come out once a year.
Yes. Yes.
Because from this perspective, I think one of the things that a lot of students and guys that are out jobbing musicians, weekend warriors, stuff like that, there's no disrespect to at all.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that to you, it's a tool. It's I
Oh
need
yeah.
that tool. I remember
Yeah.
when I think the BBC did a documentary and they re-recorded "Please Please Me" in one day, and it was with Bev Knight and
Oh, that's right. Ralph did it, didn't he? And Phil
yeah,
Mulford. I
and
think.
Phil was on it. And the first thing
Yeah.
I said to Phil when I saw it was like, Phil, why was you using a jazz bass? You know, it's just like because he for the whole session. But
Yeah.
you say it's the attention to detail, and,
Yeah.
and some people at certain levels, if they're OCD fueled, which severe,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you do feel it. So it does become, yeah, I've got this arsenal of instruments
Yeah.
because they're strung up for certain jobs at certain times, which is an
Yeah.
important part. We talk about very detail.
Yeah.
Brian Wilson,
Yeah.
like, wow. I mean, his record, the ability, the stuff that he did with multi-tracking
Yeah.
with the Beach Boys back in the day was another level.
Yeah.
Sometimes my camera switched off when I do this, but let's hope it doesn't.
Oh
With
yeah.
a Philharmonic,
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you even begin to go back to someone's masterpiece with so many orchestrations, so many layers of voice and stuff, which we saw in
Yeah.
Pet Sounds, and then go, right, now we're going to orchestrate this and put the RPO behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This and the Aretha one for me are proper hairs on the back of the neck. This is serious arranging. It's wonderful. Tell us about Beach Boys with the RPO.
Okay, so by the time I did the Beach Boys album, we'd done a couple of Roy Orbisons, a couple of Elvises. I think I can't remember all sorts of things. So the people in the studio, which is Nick Patrick, producer, Pete Schweer, our engineer, beautiful, or Simon Hancock, engineers, very experienced, know how to get sounds out of everything. And it's always just me on my own, apart from the one I did with Ralph, the Aretha one, which was great to have Ralphie there because we're such old mates and all the rest of it. So it's basically we're zoning in on bass, and by that time we've got the formula how to do this. So I'm sent all these things. I'm ready how to get. I've got basses here. So we get it done quick. Where it's like it's the most efficient machine you've ever seen in your life, and we have a laugh. We have a complete laugh. And I can say, "Oh, stop there." And Pete says, "No, I'm going to move the mic on a bass, double bass." And for instance, I always use my Sans amp as a DI box and take my little Ampeg valve amp, Portaflex, and sort of second tune into. We're playing. I played that precision on almost all of it, flat wounds like a la Chuck Rainey. And I went in and had a listen. We were altering a few things, and I said, how are you balancing the bass there, Pete?" And he went, "I'm only using the mic." He said, "Because it's just such a brilliant sound." And that was the first time I think that I was aware that because I didn't take an amp in the studio for the first 25 years of my bass session career. No one wanted one. And, engineers going, "Oh, no, there'll be too much spill." But now I take it to everything. And I absolutely love it. It's 25 watts, for God's sake. And it sounds
That's
amazing.
my little 30-watt valve there, So
there you go. I mean, there's nothing like it. But so on the Beach Boys one, we were full on ready. And I'd gone to the trouble actually because I was trying to work out, and this comes from playing, having to play Paul McCartney bass on sessions over the years, and you realise a lot of it's just upstrokes he plays, and a certain position with your right hand, and sometimes it's downstrokes, whatever. But those things really matter. Like if you play with James Jameson, and if you can play it, if it, in the style of, but if you take away your index fingers, pardon me, just play with your first finger, you eventually start going, "Fuck, this is how he did it." This
Yeah.
is how he did it, one finger,
Yeah.
and you know, and it becomes apparent to you. So I'm kind of those sessions, those RPO, the Elvis and the Robertson, were really an education for me because it's there to be. It's not you just sit there, oh that'll do. It's like no, I want to sound like this. I want to I want to play a pick like Carol Kay did, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to move the. Let me move the foam under the bridge, and we'll get closer. No, that's better. That's better. You know, these things are. I like doing that, so that's how it worked on the Beach Boys. And of course, once again, we only had limited things to listen to. There was a manufactured click. But the orchestra wasn't even recorded on there yet, so we were the right at the bare bones, and it's always lovely to hear it when it comes out. You know.
Yeah, no, it's funny that the lessons you learn from cross contamination of either different techniques or different sessions and stuff like that. I was relatively new to upright. You know, upright's been something that I've been trying to do in the last 10 years and get that stuff together. But going back to the Jameson stuff, and you realise you said about the one, you know, the hook was friendly, but obviously Jameson's background was upright. So if he did dead notes, he would do from above into it. So when he went onto the edge, you said, "Oh, crikey, that's how he played it." Which is different if you're playing two fingers pizzicato, you know.
And the other thing he did, if he plays a D, he'll play two fast Ds, and you realise how does he do that? Because he's played the open string and the fretted fret as well. And there's that book, Standing in the Shadows of
the Doctor stuff.
Yeah, that's sensational. And the best one for me on that is David Hungate playing. What does he play on there? It's so beautifully played. Beautifully. I can't remember.
I've got it here. Here we go. Let's have a rummage. How amazingly professional of me just to turn around and start looking through the bookshelf. Down there somewhere. I don't want to show people my builder's crack whilst I'm looking for a book, so I'm not going to do it. It's good.
Anyway, that's if you go into that, those parts, you see how he does it, how he does it. Which, you know, you're going to have to play like James Jameson, you're in trouble for a start.
There's the lesson. There's the lesson, kids. Transcribe. Try and record it and sound like you're going to learn an awful lot more. So
I mean, but you know, I mean, you can try and enter their uniqueness, but you know, playing the Chuck Rainey stuff on the Aretha stuff, you realise that he kind of knocks it with his right hand, doesn't he? He taps it. And you can, and I had a go at it, and I thought I'm never going to play this clean enough. So you get somewhere near it, you know what I mean. And I think I did a pretty good job. They had to be exactly right because the bass was all the way. It was still on the vocal track, you know.
Yeah, that's great. Steve, thanks, mate. It's been such a lovely hang to break bread with you, talk about loads of experience stuff. It's just been brilliant. For the guys, obviously, I'm going to put some links in YouTube. Send them to go to some of the videos, the RPA. They can check that out. Grab a knowledge on to internet and try and find you some nice links. There's some great transcriptions that are on With Bass in Mind's website that are free to download for people. We talked about Tommy Godbill's stuff. There's, I think, Preacher Man is on the website. I did that. Including the humdinger E flat in the middle. I remember it because I said, "Do you want me to play this?" Went, well, yeah. And there's another one where I think it's Eric Gale playing swing bass on "Don't Play That Song for Me." Right.
It's a swing thing. It's great. But there's like I'd never have played that. I'd never have played, and I played it with, you know, confidence.
With flair. You went there. But that stuff's up there. If you want some Aretha Franklin, there's some Aretha Franklin transcription on there. There's some great stuff. It's worth going to check out. Worth downloading. Steve, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been awesome to break bread.
No problem. Anytime. If you want a part two, just come back and have a chat about something else.
Can we do it at the pub next time? It's way more.
Of course.
We like it.
You should get a Zoom hang together with Trevor and and Mulford and Donzo and Lawrence. You know, we'd all have a laugh doing it. You know?
Well, Laurie's involved with Bass in Mind. He's been on our Christmas hangs a few times now. So
Okay, great.
there's a few people in the woodwork. But yeah, I think we're going to do it. We'll arrange one big hang, and we can all just come online and take the mickey out of each other, and it'll be brilliant. And I'll just stand between you like a referee or something. That's good. Guys,
we got caught. Me and Lawrence were on. What were we doing? One of the drum hangs. You know that they do that. Neil Wilkinson runs it. Yeah. I think I went on there for the Gadsden one, or no, the Jeff Porcaro one. I ended up talking to me and Lee Sklar were talking away all these drummers. I say, hey Lee, well, how come no one's talked about hi-hat clutch pedals yet? You know. You got to let the drummers have it. You got to give it one.
I just love the thought of getting you, Lawrence Cottle, Ian Thomas has got to be a must in the same room at the same time.
It was Ian's one. Me and Lawrence were on Ian's one as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. It's complete hooliganism in the one room. So that's good. Guys, this monster gentleman, I always get it wrong. I can't remember if you're on my left or my right when I do the broadcast. But the gentleman sharing the stage with me is the absolute monster gentleman, Steve Pearce. Thank you so much. If you love the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow this gentleman's work because he's an absolute just Don. He's the godfather of British baseball. Metaphorically, Steve. So
I still feel like the tiny young slip of a lad.
Yeah, I said that until I realised I turned 42 this year. So
I'm far the oldest in most bands these days.
That's good.
Whatever.
Guys, I've been Phil Mann. This has been With Bass in Mind, and this chatterbox has been Steve Pearce. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.